Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Inspire Knowledge. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Inspire Knowledge Spiritual and Creative Symposium interview. We have Hayley Wallace here, who is a land healer. How are you, Hayley?
I'm great, thanks, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So,
Good.
tell me more about land healings. What is land healing, and how do you do this?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yes, land healing is really interesting because it's something that people haven't had a lot of awareness of until more recent times. And a lot of times when I say, oh, I'm a land healer, people look at me strangely and go, oh, what? So it's definitely a process of education and sharing with people what exactly I do. So land healing is, I call it the art of uncovering what is underneath where you live or where you work and balancing that, because everything, as you know, most people realize these days, everything is energy, no matter what. There's nothing that is not energy. And so the earth itself has energy, and it has energy in different forms underneath the ground. So everyone's heard of underground water, whether it's underground like pools or streams, that kind of thing. So the water that's flowing underneath properties carries an energy to it. And when it's a healthy spring and people are using that as their bore water and things like that, it's the energy is usually okay. It's not too bad. Sometimes it can be disruptive, but not always. But when it carries noxious gases, toxic minerals, sediment from rocks and that kind of thing, it can contain a very low vibrational energy. And when you get people to stand over that, when I say, look, here's an underground running water stream here, stand here and tell me what you feel, I would say about 85% of people go, oh, wow, yeah, I can feel that. And they kind of do this motion of like, it feels like, and you can see they're doing this movement action, and it's like, oh, it doesn't feel very good. And so I say, yeah, that's it. That's underground running water. So if your bed is positioned over that, or your work chair is positioned over that, and you're sitting there for 8 hours a day or trying to sleep over it, that's going to be very disruptive and it's going to impact your energy. So the same can be said for ley lines, for earthquake energy, for imbalanced grid lines, Curry lines, Hartman lines, this kind of thing. Areas where significant trees have been removed. So these are all the sort of things that I look for. And with positive ley lines, we can boost up the beautiful, nice, naturally existing energy. But with everything else, like the negative ley lines, water, etc., I actually put crystals in the ground at the boundaries of the property to recalibrate and raise the vibration of that energy.
Awesome.
Mm,
It sounds really interesting. So,
yeah,
do
it's
other
fascinating.
do other cultures practice this?
Yes, they do in their own way. When you look back at the history of many different cultures, and of course, I'm here in Australia, so we look often seeing energies of Indigenous cultures here. And sometimes, the beautiful way that they lived on the land, and sometimes the trauma that occurred, a 100 years ago and into more recent times. So, yeah, they absolutely had their own ways of working with the land and healing the land. And the Indigenous were well aware of the ley lines and which areas to utilize and which areas to sort of avoid, and they had their own methods of actually rebalancing things. They could clear things we call death imprints. They would have had their own wording for that, of course, but cultures all over the world knew how to balance these. It's us who live a little bit disconnected from the earth who kind of think that's a really strange, bizarre concept.
Mm,
But I think we're probably one of the first, handful of generations who thinks it's bizarre rather than just living with it and knowing what to do with it. But when we
yes.
look at ancient cultures like the Egyptians, for example, the pyramids at Giza, they're actually built over the top of crossing positive ley lines. So they
Okay.
knew how to harness that energy, for the purposes of what they used the pyramids for. And even when we look at the old cathedrals throughout Europe, again, they're built on crossing positive ley lines.
Yeah. So they must
So
have knew already all about it.
completely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's not new knowledge. It's not new scientific, findings. It's really ancient knowledge that eventually was either lost or buried or hidden or whatever, it was. So yes, there's nothing new about it. And so when people kind of go, wow, that's weird and wacky, it's like, well, if you read back throughout your history books, you'll hear lots of evidence about it, you know, from all sorts of cultures.
Yes.
Mm.
So, can you give me some examples of how it can help people?
Yeah, sure. So it can help in so many ways. When I do a land healing at someone's property, like sometimes people ring me and they say, if I have a land healing, what will happen? What should I expect? And my answer is kind of like, I don't know, but it's probably going to be better than what was going on before that. Because
Yes.
when you take any kind of energy imbalance and you rebalance it again, you know, things improve. So the most common things that I see improvements in are either health or relationships. A lot of people say we've had such disharmony, you know, my husband and I, or my teenage children and I, we're kind of squabbling all the time. And some people even ring me and they say, we need you to fix this divorce house because the last few people who owned this house all got divorced. And it's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So, you know, rebalancing the relationships in the house simply because there's more harmony going on, that is a common one. Definitely health, because if you're sleeping over, let's say, crossing negative ley line and a crossing black water stream, that's extremely heavy energy. And so if it's impacting your sleep, and you know, even that alone will impact your health. Um, there was a study done, I think it was in the mid 1800s. There was a lady named Kath Backler, and she was in Europe, and she was called to this little town, and they had a cancer cluster happening. There was about 65 people in this small town who had cancer, and she was renowned for being able to find this low vibrational energy in the earth. And so what they did was they handed her a map and they said, here's the map of the town. If you map out where the ley lines and all these things are, will you be able to pinpoint which houses the cancer patients were living in? And so she did. She mapped it all out, and she said, "I believe it would be this house, etc." She got it right 100%.
Wow.
So that was pretty amazing, you know, that she could say, yeah. And I feel for me, like when I go to a house and I see, you know, certain types of living conditions, and I think, already I know what I'm going to find here. So, for example, if you're living over stagnant water, these people say they've got no motivation. They can't get around to clearing things out. They say, I've got all this clutter and I know I need to do something about it, but I just can't get around to it. And even in extreme cases, they become hoarders. When I go to places where there's a lot of earthquake energy, I find people saying things like, oh, I just don't really feel like the place is ours. I just don't feel like I belong here. And they're always kind of thinking about moving maybe one day sometime. And, you know, they
Yep.
say it feels really unsettled and unstable. So I know you know, from years of listening to people talk and then looking at what they're living over, it's like, yeah, wow, this energy changes people.
Yep.
So if you've already got a tendency to hoarding and then you live on some over stagnant water, boy, is that going to spiral. But even people who say, my last place was immaculate, but since we've been living here, I've got all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, you don't have a tendency to hoarding, but that's how much the property's changing you. But I also see resolutions with neighbours happening as well. When you've got a lot of stuff that's going through your place and through the neighbour's place too, and we balance it on your property with using the crystals instead of the old-fashioned way of using the metal rods, we're actually healing it in both directions. So the neighbours get the benefit too.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's not as complete as your place because obviously there'll be things over there that we're not picking up. But
Yeah.
if you've got a negative ley line running, you know, through your neighbours on your right and through your place and your neighbours on your left, and we balance that on your property, both sides are getting some improvement too. Because all the things that I'm talking about here, energies under the property, are just like a stress to the body. That's what it amounts to. It's stress.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you think of that all pulling your energy down of your family and yourself and whatnot, no matter what's going on in your life, throw a bucket load of stress at it and everything gets worse.
Yes.
You know, and just like we know, if whatever's going on in your life, you have a terrible night's sleep, the next day's not going to go as smoothly.
Yes.
So when people are living over these things and they're constantly having disrupted sleep or they constantly got this stress, you know, not just relationships and health, I've seen it affect people financially. And even sometimes, you know, when I'm looking at a property and it's just like, oh, okay, it's an intuitive process, which crystals to put in the ground. So sometimes I go to put certain crystals and it's like, I know that this must be impacting them financially.
Mhm.
So there's certain crystals when they come up on a negative ley line, and I think, okay, these people are really struggling. And when I ask them, are things pretty, not okay with finances right now? They always go, oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
But when I see certain crystals on a positive ley line and they're related to money, I go, okay, it seems to me like things here would be going okay, but more flow would be better. And they always
Yes.
go, yeah, no, we're okay. But yeah, sure, more flow in this would be wonderful. So you can really pick it. Yeah, so finances and like I say, so many times I've been to properties where people sort of say, oh, no, we don't get along with the neighbours, these guys just don't talk to us and blah, blah, blah. After the land healing, so many times people contact me and they say, well, we seem to be speaking civilly. They may not be best friends, but, as
Oh,
long as it can be somewhat friendly, then that's good. That's an improvement. So,
yeah, that's really cool.
yeah, yeah.
So, can you share a story about someone who had a land healing?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I've actually got some of my maps here with me that I use for my land healing talks and whatnot. So I'm going to share this one here. It's belonged to a fellow. I'm just going to call him Joe. So let's say Joe, he called me. This property, I'm going to hold up a map for a moment. So Joe owned this property here, and he said to me, I want to actually sell this place, but I've had it on the market for a while and it's not selling. Now, I'll just pop that down for a second. I'll bring it back up as we need it. So he said to me, I've heard about you and you've done some other work for some real estate, friends and property developers of mine. And so he said, look, I don't really understand what you do, but if there's something you can do to help, this would be great because I really just need to sell this property. It's an older property. It's down in Victoria, and it definitely needs some renos and things like that. So I said, all right, yep, I'll take a look at it for you. And so I brought the map up on Google Earth to look at. And so he said to me, what would you like to know? Do you want to know some history of the property? And I said, no, it's fine. Don't tell me anything. I'll just take a look and I'll let you know what I found. And so I mapped out this property. And so I found a couple of negative ley lines, which these are the ones that you can see in red. And so they're crossing straight over the house. I then mapped out the underground water, which was the line crossing the property in blue. I then mapped out where I could see old earthquake lines. These are the pink squiggly lines running through. And so again, they're running, I'll bring it just a little bit closer for a minute so you can sort of zoom in and see.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
So, earthquake lines running under this house as well. There is a positive ley line, which is kind of cutting through the backyard. So it's not under the house, but at least it's on the property. So it gives me something that's naturally high vibrational to work with. I also mapped out a couple of areas. There's some black little stripy lines where the EMF is coming onto the property from either phone towers or power lines or that kind of thing. So I think, where are we? We can see, I'm kind of doing this backwards up here.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. And the other one is over
Over there.
in this area.
Yep.
Yeah. And then this little pink dot over here is where a significant tree had been removed. So it's not under the house, but it's quite close. So to me, when I look at that map, that's a lot going on there. And when it comes
Yes.
to earthquake lines, Victoria and South Australia, they still today experience about 40 low-level earthquakes every single day in Australia. Even though Australia is quite a stable continent, it still rumbles and moves. So when I looked at all of this, I sort of thought, wow, okay, no wonder it's not selling. First of all, where this driveway is, anyone who wants to drive into that driveway and park the car drives over a negative ley line, drives over an underground water vein and parks over earthquake lines before they walk into the house where all that mess is underneath. So that's a lot of stress. So people are walking in there and kind of going, I don't know, not sure if this place feels right. Now, real estate agents tell me that virtually everyone buys the property based on how it feels. They'll talk logically. Is it close to a school? Beautiful high ceilings, blah, blah, blah. They'll talk about all those things, but they say the bottom line is they'll buy it based on how it made them feel. So I was explaining to Joe, this is how people are driving into your property. They're driving over this and they're straight away going, uh-oh, I don't like the feel of this place. Then they're going inside where all of that, that's going on underneath is kind of congregated almost right by the front door. And so I said to him, if we balance all of this out, we're virtually rubbing out all of these lines on the map, except for the positive ley line, and taking away the impact of that. So people are walking in and they're seeing the property for what the property has to offer, the location, et cetera, without all of that energetic, this doesn't feel very good underneath all of that. Yep. So the interesting thing about this property too is, so I said, here's where we're going to put the crystals and whatnot. I'll post them down to you so you can pop them in place. Usually bury them about 10 centimeters deep, just so they don't get washed away with rain. Okay. And so I said to him also, because once I've mapped out the lines, I usually sit with my hand on the map for a bit and just sort of tune into what else can I see that's gone on here. I was the kid who could see the ghosts, so to speak, which is simply just energy left behind. You know what I mean? And so I tune in and, what's gone on there before. And I said to him when I rang him, I was telling him, I can see this line, and he's kind of just going along with it, not knowing whether this is real or true or whether to believe me. And because some people are skeptical at first. Yes. And then I said to him, also, I don't know if you know, and I said, but I picked up a death imprint on the property. Someone has died here previously. And he cut me off and he said, oh, yes, this is why I rang you. He said it was the last tenant. He was a man in there and he passed away. And he said, I wondered if there was any energy left behind. And I said, well, there actually was. When people die in a stressful or traumatic way, it can often leave energy pockets behind. So I said to him, look, I've cleared out all of the energies and things like that, so that's not a problem anymore. But, I'll send you the crystals to put in the ground for all of the lines and whatnot. And I said to him, but lastly, I said, this property was really interesting because there's so much going on in one spot. I'm not surprised that it's not selling. And he said, well, to be honest, I've got to tell you something. He said, I didn't want to say it before. He said, but to cut a long story short, basically his adult son refuses to go to this house because he said creepy, weird, frightening things are happening there. He said, his son went there, opened the door, and all the locked doors and windows started banging. And he said, we've got these really old-fashioned like chandelier type things, and they were swinging like crazy and all this sort of stuff. And I said, I'm not surprised to hear any of this, because when you've got so much negative energy under a property, that's the type of thing that's attracted, because it's all about a vibrational match. You know what I mean? When you've got a low vibrational property, those low vibrational energies are quite comfortable hanging out there. When you pick up the energy of a property, raise the vibration of the whole thing, particularly by mapping out all of these lines, a lot of those energies just start to clear. So I always work on the lines first, and I always clear the energies in the house last. And I have to say, Stephanie, that probably about 40 or 50% of my work is properties who have already had some type of house clearing done before. And they say, oh, we've already had this place cleared. And I say, oh, okay, well, why am I here? And they say, well, it was good for a while, but there's other problems occurring. And I say, oh, okay. Did the last person balance ley lines and water and things? And they say, no, they just cleared the energies out of the house. And it's like, okay, all right. So they've done a great job of clearing the house, but we haven't actually dealt with the underlying problem of the low vibrational energy, which is just going to allow things to come back. Yeah. So, I've got 1,000,001 stories of, super interesting things that have happened in properties. But, I kind of like this particular place because it really sort of covers a lot of angles. And so, yes, the place did sell, not immediately, because now you're selling it based on, like I say, location. It was on a busy intersection, needed lots of renos, etc. But, it did sell eventually. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's amazing that you have all of those energies in one property.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And people often say to me, oh, I'd like to have, a lane healing because I just want to see if I live near any ley lines. And I'm going to say We all do, because ley lines are, it's like they're holographic. So, for example, you can map out the whole of the earth with major, major ley lines. But if you
Yes.
then want to map out just Australia, then you're looking at the lines that are slightly smaller. If you want to map out just Queensland, then we're looking at the more minor lines again, right down to, I've even worked on properties where they're cabins in a retirement village. And some of these are just like 4 rooms and that's it. And
Yes.
absolutely, you can still map it out there because it's holographic. And we're looking at more minor lines, but they still make a difference. They still matter if you're sleeping over them.
Yes. So, how can you work remotely and not have to be on site?
Yeah, this is a great question, because I've actually just flipped over, especially for the summer months up here in Queensland. Working on site gets pretty hot and pretty hard, especially when people are on acreage and things like that. So I've actually just made the decision to flip over just to only work remotely, particularly during summer. And also because I'm probably clocking up about 10,000 kilometres every 6 weeks in my car. So it's a little bit unsustainable. And all my property developer work is all remote. Now, when I first learnt land healing, which I did my first workshop with this about 17 years ago, we walked the land. This is what negative ley lines feel like. Get to know what that feels like in your body. This is what water feels like. Get to know what that feels like, etc. I don't use divining rods. I don't use pendulums or anything. I find it with my energy. And now that I've been doing it for so long, I can look and go, okay, I can see it. There's a negative ley line there. You know what I mean? I can see there's underground water here. It's like I just kind of know. So, once I got used to walking the land and feeling these energies, I know what they feel like. When I feel this, it's a negative ley line. When I feel that, it's a positive ley line, etc. So exactly the same thing happens. So the map I've just shown you, it's the same process. When I sit here and look at the map, I'm literally just going, okay, show me where the negative ley lines are, and bang, there they are. I just, I can see them. I put my hand on the map and it's like, yep, there's that same feeling. And so I'll draw where the negative ley line is, and then I'll ask the next thing, show me where the underground water is that needs healing in the highest good of my client. There it is. There's the water, because there's obviously a lot of intention set, before I begin the work. And my intention is to find what needs to be healed for that particular person or the family that's living there. So I'll only see what needs to be healed. And I kind of want to reiterate that, because when you're walking around with divining rods, which, yes, absolutely, you can find these things and they work, I find those people end up healing so much more than is needed, because they're finding everything that's on the property, even the things that are not in the vibrational range of that particular client and actually aren't impacting them at all. So remotely, to me, it is no difference whatsoever. I can see the energies of people who've been in the house. I can see what's gone on in the area, right back to Indigenous times, and I can see where the lines and the earthquake energies and things are as well. So
Oh, wow.
It still takes me, I used to put aside about 3 hours to do a property when I was working on site, partly because you're talking to the person, here, stand here, feel this, and, it takes quite a bit of time. But even with remote, by the time I print out the maps, map it all out, sit and tune into the energies, type up a report for someone, send it over and send them the crystals and jump on the phone with them, I'm still kind of looking at about 3 hours of work as well, but I don't have all the driving to do. I'm not kind of living in the car all the time, so it's much more effective. So I do tend to prefer remote work, because and when I jump on the phone and explain it all to people and go through the map with them, they often say to me, you know what, that area where you said this is, you're right, I don't like the feel of that area, but over here where you say the positive ley line is, we love sitting there. And it's like, it's, people get the same kind of experience, really, of, that connection with the land, even with remote. So,
Cool. So, could you tell me about the Lucky Door Prize? What are you offering for the symposium?
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. Yeah, so I actually, I never set out to do this, but because I used to be a naturopath, so I used to sit in clinic and work with clients from that perspective. And eventually I kind of got out of that method of helping people and hopped into land healing. It's a different way of helping people. But I had a lot of people over the time say to me, okay, so you fixed my land. That feels great. What about me? What do I do about me and my energy, you know? And
Hmm.
at first it was like, oh, okay, you know, I'm just working with land. But a few people said to me, you must be able to do personal readings as well. And at first I
Yes.
kind of went, yeah, okay, all right, I'll do a reading for you, but don't tell anyone. No. And then gradually kind of word got around and eventually it was like, oh, you know what, I'm going to put it on my website. So so yeah, so I do personal readings as well, and I'm offering a personal reading. So how I do these is I get people to send me a photo of themselves, a full length photo, and then I jump on a live call for an hour. So I'm looking at their photos so I can see their energy and what's going on, just the same way I do with the land healing. And you know, I talk to them and sort of go, okay, you know, this is what I'm picking up. I've got blockage here in the throat chakra, or I've, you know, and it's related to this, and it seems to be something that happened when you were 3, or, you know, whatever comes
Yes.
up, kind of thing. So being that I was a naturopath, I'm very kind of, here's the problem and here's the solution.
Yes.
So I'm not remotely like a tarot reader where I go, oh, you might meet Mr. Right in 6 months' time or whatever, you know, like occasionally future stuff comes up, but that's not my focus.
Hmm.
So I'm very much what's out of balance in your energy field, and, you know, what are the things that you can do to, first of all, bring this to your awareness and move forward to help correct this. So yeah, so that's what I'm going to offer is a 1 hour personal reading. Um, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, it was really interesting to hear about land healings and what they are and how they work. And I hope there are many questions today from our viewers about them. I find it fascinating because it's something I definitely haven't seen in the spiritual industry very much. So
Mm,
thank you very much for doing this interview with me. And I
my
hope you have
pleasure.
a wonderful day.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. You have a great day.